We see a lot of videos on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram about rotation in the golf swing. Think about how you throw a ball. Have you ever thought about rotating? Probably not. You've probably just moved to throw the ball back with the intent of throwing it where you want to go. So the intent behind the motion actually drives the action. But in golf, we've got so wrapped up in how to move that we've limited ourselves, naturally constrained the system through practicing a particular way, trying to adhere to some kind of concept. Well, what we need to do is we need to strip it back, right back down to just anatomical function. The secret is in how we were designed. Now, we actually get rotation without thinking of rotation, because what you probably think of rotation as is what is known as horizontal rotation, transverse rotation. This rotation here, this lateral rotation, this is a frontal plane rotation, and then we have a sagittal plane rotation, which is flexion extension. So that would be rotating in this direction, front to back, frontal side to side, transverse is that horizontal rotation. What most people think of as rotation is the transverse element, but it's actually the others that are giving us the transverse. Think about throwing a ball. You probably wouldn't go straight into a transverse rotation. You wouldn't rotate horizontally straight away. This would throw out the sequencing. It'd throw out how we transfer energy through the system. It's going to throw out everything. Going for that big movement first now throws the sequence out and also throws out any potential speed production. And it's also causing havoc with the actual direction element of it. What you do is you probably just swing the ball side to side, and you'd be moving side to side too. Even a little bit of rotation this way. A little bit like the wrecking ball. Side to side. It's a frontal plane, predominantly frontal plane action, side to side. So we're now creating momentum in this direction. And what we're tapping into is the natural anatomical function of the rib cage and the pelvis. Because the rib cage is designed to move like this. Not like this, where it just rotates. That's not how it's designed, i.e. just rotating the spine. The rib cage rotates like this. It glides. And as we allow the rib cage essentially to tilt, one side is tilting posteriorly, one's anterior, and what happens is the rib cage then rotates, the spine rotates, and we get transverse. So to demonstrate this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the hands here and I'm just going to move them apart. It's not a pull action or a pushing action. There's no tension in there, an active force. It's just letting them glide. This hand's going down, this hand's going up in a straight line. And notice what happens. There's a lateral flexion straight away. Look at the zip. It's just flexing this way. It's curving. And notice as the arms get further and further apart, I end up over here. The transverse rotation happens naturally as a product of the lateral and the extension. Because there's also an extension taking place that's happening without you thinking about it. And as you allow yourself to continually flex laterally, you are going to rotate. Can't avoid it. Unless you've got some physical restriction. If it's really tight in the spine, you might need to use a bit more transverse. Okay? But this rotation's not coming from down here. It's coming from here. It's this bit. This is the most flexible part of the spine. The mid-upper thoracic, generally the most flexible, particularly upper thoracic and cervical. We can allow ourselves to flex through that mid and upper thoracic and rotate. And here we are in this, what we perceive to be rotated state or form. But we got there by laterally flexing. So you'll notice from a posterior view, I'm literally flexing, laterally flexing, and we get the rotation. So at no point am I doing this to try and rotate. If we just rotated first, how do we then know how much or when to laterally flex? When does that lateral flexion kick in? Where do I point my shoulders? Where do I do all this business? There's lots of information, there's loads of videos on how you should do this, when you should do it. I work with 3D, kinematics, work with kinetics, force plates, pressure plates. We could measure this to the nth degree and say when this should be happening and the ranges that you should be using through particular phases and particular events of the motion. But we don't need to know all this. You don't think about it if you were throwing or hitting. This happens naturally, but we can take our experiences from those hitting and throwing actions to recognise it in a golf swing. Just allow your body, using a medicine ball, just to swing the ball from side to side. If you've got balance pads, this is even better. So if you've got a GRF system, you'll get balance pads. This will all be on your download. You've got access to this information, these exercises. If not, you could use a pillow, you could use a cushion, you could use a medicine ball, you could use a hold-all, anything, a basket of balls, and just start to feel that side-to-side action and start to integrate the wrecking ball action. So it's not just a pendulum action here, swinging from the centre of rotation, i.e. the midpoint between the shoulders. It's got some sway. So there's some lateral shift and lateral rotation. And now we've got all this momentum. And if I allow this to continue, I'm going to start to rotate naturally. The body's going to start to rotate. Here, it's going to be very much linear, frontal plane, and then it's going to start to move into a more inclined form as I start to go from this side-to-side action into a longer side-to-side, and it's going to start to swing, and I'm going to have to change direction pretty quick. But you can see there's a lot of rotation going on here. Look at all this rotation. They're going to start falling out. I can't avoid it. Here, there's too many balls. Look at all that rotation. There's so much rotation and so many balls I'm going to have to pick up. But this rotation, once I start to allow this to go, it's going to be safer using a balance pad. As soon as I start to let this go, you start to create all the rotation you'll ever need with the upper thorax. It's the upper thorax here that's allowing the arms to swing because it's moving the shoulders. It's freedom to the shoulders, freedom to the arms. If I move like this, a lot of us struggle with the inside takeaway, rolling it on the inside. Oh, my coach has told me I'm inside all the time. And then I have to come over the top, or I have to get on. I've got this flip roll here from the inside. Well, if I'm going into a transverse too early, it's naturally taking me into this place. Now I've got to lift the arms to get up here. So I'm completely detached, and I'm having to use tension to swing the arms. As opposed to the wrecking ball, the momentum is already there. All I've got to do is allow a continuation to take place. And there's no tension necessary to swing the arms. I don't have to think about where the arms are going and how much I'm lifting, whether it's a two-plane swing, a one-plane swing, whether I'm below the shoulders, above the shoulders. We don't need to think about this because we don't think about this when we're throwing a ball or playing tennis or swinging a baseball bat. Any hitting action, we don't think about it. Swinging a hammer, swinging a sledgehammer, all these things. We don't think about that. The action naturally planes itself in response to what you're hitting and what you want to do in terms of the golf shot. So allowing your arms to react to the movement of the body, therefore it's key, the movement of the body is allowing the swinging action of the arms to happen naturally. So frontal plane guys, wrecking ball. If you haven't got all this stuff and you've not got loads of balls to spray around, take the golf club, karate chop hold between the thumb and forefingers, hold it out there, bring it down underneath your shoulders and just swing it from side to side. Most of you will probably do this at first because you're not used to using a swaying action of the body because we've probably told ourselves not to sway because it's not desirable, it creates lots of problems, but actually it's really essential because a sway from side to side, when done at speed, creates a lot of momentum with the arms, and the net result from moving side to side dynamically is that the body stays stable because the forces counter each other and balance each other out. So the net result is we stay stable with the bonus of a lot of momentum with the arms and speed of the club. And when we just allow this to continue through that function of the rib cage and spine, don't need to think about where the arms go. All this stuff happens naturally. So you've got the momentum, you've got the rotation, and you don't have to worry about where the arms are, because as you rotate transverse, it's going to really start to tilt the swing and plane it, i.e. make it easy to bring the club back down on a path that's travelling away, accelerating, and allowing your body to rotate. Because the club needs to be able to travel away for us to rotate to strike the ball. Otherwise, if the club takes over, it gets to the ball, doesn't need the body rotation. So the body just switches off because it's not necessary. As soon as that starts to take over our rotation, it's getting to the ball early before we need to rotate. So the body's not got any reason to rotate. While it's behind and it's starting to swing away, we have to rotate to bring it back. So when the club's behind us and we're rotating, and it's starting to swing away, we have to rotate. We're creating all these movements naturally as a response. But if I do this first, and the club's in here, and I run out of space, and I've got to start lifting, if I go into transverse rotation early in the downswing too, which is what I see a lot of, as opposed to laterally flexing and rotating, you can see where that's taking us. All these problems that we see. So if I get to here, and I just rotate now transverse, it throws me this way. Whereas if I'm using my lateral flexion, you can see it's very different. And now our body has to rotate. Therefore, I can use now that natural rotation to release the club. So I can trust that later snap of the wrist. I don't have to get active with the arms and tension. We can use the swing weight. And that's all we're doing this for, to use this swing weight the most natural way. This is a natural swinging action. This is not a natural swinging action. So if you find yourself taking the club away from the golf ball this way and then trying to position the club with your arms, that is not natural. It's never been natural. It might look okay in a still shot, but in terms of functional movement, it's doing you no favours whatsoever. So find the functionality first, experience that functionality, then start to expand it. If it's just 3/4, that's fine. Take the club, take your grip, and just feel that 3/4 action. And then expand it if you like. And take yourself into those places where you're just freewheeling and play some shots, enjoy it. Go to the range with no expectation. Go to the range just to explore, hitting shots, enjoy moving for the sake of it in a new way. It's a new challenge, it's a new experience, and just by having that childlike, playful approach mentally, it's going to allow you to physically explore and recognise then what is your most optimal way. How do you let go and use this swing weight in a free-flowing way? And it's just the start. It's just the start to developing a natural motion. And then everything else that you've been working on, you'll probably find starts to slot in because it's enabled to, it's allowed to, because what we're doing here is not limiting it, it's not compromising it. You're allowing things to happen, and that's the key. Not making it happen, allowing it to happen. And this exercise is the start.